Okay, let's get started. Today is August 3rd, 2020. I'm here with Kandy Griffin Vandawalker, and we are going to give you a frame of reference for Project Pegasus being fully operational and get into what these unacknowledged special operations and covert action actually look like with the different DoD-led Title 10 operations versus the CIA-led Title 50 operations. And we are essentially going to walk the line between those types of things today on a project which has been framed historically by the former whistleblower who has come out about this project as a project that initially began under the aegis of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency with a link into CIA. And so we will begin to frame that reference with you now. And we're going to move right on into the description of this location that you will see in these two images right here above the narrative of treason is not a security clearance there. And so what you're looking at here in the cover photo, okay, is Pegasus Plaza in downtown Dallas. And what you're looking at there is Medusa on the ground at Pegasus Plaza there again, which is directly adjacent to AT&T World Headquarters, which is a place that I had my first teleportation experience, which I have described in several other interviews and amongst my colleagues and friends. And so to back up here, what we're going to move into is we're going to see how to use symbology, color coding, and exploiting narratives as a method of security classification. And we're going to do that real quickly by framing this for you guys with the actual myth of Pegasus itself, which has not been referenced for the project until this time openly in a video format. And so for those of you who are unaware of the Greek myth of Pegasus and how Pegasus was born, I'm going to read this for you guys, and I want you to think about this as a narrative for the rest of the things that we're going to talk about here. And so it says, Pegasus is a winged horse from Greek mythology which was fathered by Poseidon and was born from the severed neck of the Gorgon Medusa slain by Perseus. Okay? At that same time and in the same way, Cryosaur was also born. Poseidon gave Pegasus to his son Bellerophon, who put Pegasus to good use in his famous battle with the Chimera. Okay? This gets into a lot more historical references, but for now that's going to take us through what we really need to know as we go back up here and we look at this method of security classification that is used in the upper echelons of the defense and intelligence community, and something that I initially referenced in a video and presentation that I did back in 2015 at the Phoenix Rising Conference in Arizona. And so what you're going to look at here is how these two images fit seamlessly into one another. And so the birth of Pegasus shown here with this image solo, you can see how Perseus has beheaded Medusa. Cryosaur is actually coming out of her neck, and so is the Pegasus. Okay, you can see that the left hand, the right hand on the side, on this, the image on the hand on the right side of the image, but the left hand of Perseus is actually holding her head. Okay, let's take a step back here and look how those two images fit seamlessly into one another. What you're looking at here for special operations platforms, which we do utilize in conjunction with field work on social media platforms as a method of making these things transparent, getting timestamps, and facilitating the information to people in essentially what amounts to a counterterrorism format. Anyone can look at this information when it's open in a public way, and we can automatically bypass any type of essentially red tape or bureaucratic hang-ups that we might find from one agency to another. This is all under the aegis right now of really the director of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and that's how these things are partaking. So let's take a look at these two images and how they're so cohesive real quickly. We're going to see how not only is Pegasus coming out of the neck in the profile picture, but also coming out of the neck on the cover photo. If we'll take a look, you don't see Pegasus's head complete, but you can see that he's coming out of the neck of Medusa there, as Perseus is actually holding up the head of Medusa, not only in the profile picture, but up into the cover photo as well. That itself is fascinating, but then let's take note of the color coding. Let's take a look at the wings of Pegasus and how they fit directly into the architecture of solid rock of Project Pegasus. in downtown Dallas. That in and of itself is fascinating. And if you understand the color coding and the theme of these two images, you can see that this color coding is complete and it is seamless and flawless. And so those two images are made to be put together. And at this point, that point being driven home, I think anybody should start to wonder, how is that possible and what's this really about? Again, we're talking about Project Pegasus. This is a quantum access intelligence gathering operation that utilizes different time travel methodologies to gather information and act upon that information, oftentimes in a way that is for contingency planning. But we're taking this to the next phase and we're going to illustrate that. And so we're going to exploit the narrative of what this really means and drive it all the way home throughout this presentation. And so that's kind of a little bit of the background of why we're using the social media platform, what it really means. And we're going to dive right in here to a document from the School of Advanced Military Studies. Again, Pegasus being a joint DoD and CIA project. And essentially what it means to exploit a narrative is to form an allegory, which is something that your adversaries can understand, that can be exploited for operational purposes. And in this context, we're going to show how the adversary is these different secret societies, these different elements within the defense and intelligence communities that have allowed things like child sex trafficking, human cloning, and mass exploitation of the economic system and so on to go on because of their ties, not to the Constitution, not to you or your family, but to their multi-generational, oftentimes satanic circles that they run in, and how they have been on this earth for such a long time. And these technologies have been exploited in that way to such a degree that it's something that I think we're all really come to terms with right now with the stuff that's going on with, Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, so on and so forth. We're really taking a look at this. It's becoming a major issue. And that's really going to conclude the way to frame and exploit these narratives. And so, Kandy, I want to open it up for you to see if you have any questions about that.
Well, my first question would be, don't the adversarial factions utilize this, exploiting these narratives also? Wouldn't the other side be using the same type of techniques?
Sure, absolutely. And that's a great question because it drives home the point that we're really going to illustrate in a major way here in this presentation. Because when we look at the media narratives that are formed, so many people are awake now to the fact that these things have been framed in such a way that is solely advantageous for the parties that are doing them. Let's look at all of the different things that have gone on in the media just within the last 6 months. Everybody's waking up to this, no matter who they are. There's a strong element of divisiveness behind these oftentimes, but we do see them oftentimes doing psychological operations in the media. Well, they'll make themselves look so much better than they really are, and they're not really doing what they say they're doing, and they frame this in the media to sculpt public opinion in the collective, which then ultimately really does not only have a manifestive result, but it can oftentimes make people more apathetic and have a more docile approach to actually standing up for their own individual rights, which have been egregiously taken. And that continues to be a battle that we're all fighting here today. And so with that, do you have any more questions?
At this point, no.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to substantiate my authenticity on Project Pegasus itself. I'm going to do this in such a way that we're going to get with some, other information from other whistleblowers that are connected to this initially here. And I'm going to start that out with Andrew Bashaga. And he is the initial, quote, planetary level whistleblower, end quote, that has come out on innumerable different radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM and a host of other ones, different conferences and such, and also places like Jesse Ventura's TV show and other forums. And, he really did come out with some excellent information, and he and I have had some serious back and forth exchanges over the years, and I'm going to give you guys some examples of this and go ahead and get on into the technology and so on and so forth. But I want you guys to listen to this just for a quick minute, and then we'll jump down into how the technology functions and other stuff. But let me go ahead and substantiate this for you.
Go ahead. Well, with all due respect, if we're going to bring up Andy, then he is on the line, so I'm going to bring him on.
Oh yeah.
And let's try to give each other a chance to speak here. And Andrew, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me on, Eugene.
Thank you.
It's excellent to be on with you. Good to hear your voice again. Let me start out. I'm going to speak at length too, because this is a very, very convoluted story, and it's a very kind of unreal moment. And so I've just spent about the last half hour or so, throwing together some notes, just because I want to be understood about what I'm going to say tonight. Usually I don't use notes on radio, but
I just want to stop it right there real quickly and note the fact that he mentions he doesn't usually use notes on radio. We're talking about an individual with his own private law practice. He holds 5 academic degrees. He's a former Mensa member of the High IQ Society of Mensa, and he is a very well-versed individual and really knows his material. The reason that that's important to note is because the work that we have done together dovetailed in when we did it independently of one another, completely unaware that the other person was doing it. And so that's very important to realize here when we're looking at this. And I want to make note also that my initial comments from this interview have been omitted. And they really went across the board of a different range of topics, including electronic harassment, how this was being integrated into communications infrastructure, how there was genetic specific targeting going on. And also, when Michael Vera, the host of that interview, which this interview has been censored and deleted from the internet essentially, when he asked me who was waging these types of things, I got into the fact that we could be talking about the different bloodlines that run the world and so on, and made note of the fact that we're dealing with the group that will rape a child, slit their throat, and drink their blood. And this is part of the narrative that we're going to exploit all the way through this presentation, tie it into the secret society, show what's really going on as this topic continues to unfold worldwide with a great amount of momentum that's building behind it. And this is pivotal for a quantum access related operation to be strategic in its timing, and that's exactly why we're releasing this right now. So Andy's going to get into a few things here. I want you guys to listen to this as he publicly endorses my research. He does give me an apology, but he does show also, most importantly, having met with one of the developers of synthetic telepathy, what it was really all about, how it ties into CIA, and so on. So just listen to this, and we'll pick back up on the other side.
First of all, I'd just like to say in prescript that I concur with the alarm that Eugene Irvin is so intelligently raising about the threat posed to human freedom by the abuse of psychotronic devices. I would note that his testimony tracks what the Finnish public servant, Dr. Rauni Kildi, has been educating the public about mind control for several years, in fact, for over 10 years. So I don't want my comments tonight in any way to be interpreted as opposition to any of the information that Eugene is presenting. This is critical information, and in fact, when he contacted me about a year ago, I was deeply concerned by what he had to report, that he believed he had found psychotronic devices placed on American grammar school campuses after 9/11, suggesting that a very vulnerable class of citizens was being subjected to mind control. Now, my own work in the mind control area centered in the early 2000s in 2001 and 2. I took time out from my fledgling law practice at that point, and I researched about 25 mind control cases. And I basically found to a certainty, networking in the field, that every particular form of effect that was being reported, for example, a term that Eugene used tonight, synthetic telepathy, was fully operational. Some of the claimants clearly were suffering from mental illness, but, that's been said about me in my time travel claims. And, the fact that some people exist who are delusional doesn't mean that other people aren't being persecuted by their government via the abuse of psychotronic devices. And so ultimately that investigation into those 20, 25 cases, I don't really remember the exact number, it might have been about 23, something like that, led me to conclude that, some people were suffering from forms of paranoia that caused them to believe they were being persecuted, and others were provable as psychotronic attack cases. Let me give you an example. Elizabeth Targ and Fred Sitcher were the number 1 and 2 authors on a famous study into distance healing, basically trying to heal people at a distance through prayer. Oddly, Dr. Elizabeth Targ, the daughter of Fred Targ, PhD, developed the same form of rare cancer and died from that form of cancer, as was selected as the control study, the control illness for the distance healing project. But Fred Sitcher's outcome was even more bizarre.
And just to back up right there, it's such a fascinating point that he illustrates right there. We have this gentleman working on a long-distance healing study that contracts the same disease that was the subject of the study itself. And so if you missed that point, that was the point that he was driving home right there. And what does that say about the nature of reality and how these quantum fields all interact with one another is a very important subject, and we'll get into that more. But go ahead and continue to listen to this as he goes on, because what we're going to show is such a strong corroboration between the testimony of Andrew and myself and the current events and situations that have played out since that time. It is irrefutable proof that not only is Project Pegasus a valid operation that we've both been on, but that it's fully operational and that we're moving forward with it today.
Dr. Eldon Bird, who had designed some of the psychotronic technologies, he told me that by spring of 1981, he had developed the ability to send a word, a sound, or a picture to somebody's forebrain from a distance of 1/4 of a mile at 360 degrees of articulation. Basically, anything that somebody could suddenly think of, let's say on the job. You could park a van outside the parking lot, outside their business, and make them think of an animal or a word, or even say a word.
Okay, at that point, we're talking about people carrying out acts that are seemingly of their own volition, but they're not. And so what I had said prior to that was, the fact that these things were already integrated into communications infrastructure, and I specifically drove home the point that these towers were already implemented at no more than 1/4 mile distance from any given position where we might be in an urban center. And so he just backed that up from the inventor of the technology himself. He said that Eldon Bird, the developer of this technology, said that at 360 degrees of articulation, these things could be induced into a person's forebrain. So that's very important. This was back in 2013 when this interview was initially done.
But what Eldon, in trying to figure out what happened to the technology that he designed for the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps, that he knew was taken over by the CIA and went black in 1981, and then somehow fell into organized criminal, terrorist, and rogue intelligence factions, studied what Fred Sitcher was experiencing after that distance healing project. Eldon recorded what was going on, which is that behind Fred Sitcher's brainstem, at a distance of about 18 inches, sound effects from the San Francisco Bay Area where Fred lived were being focused behind Fred's head. And Eldon described them as like a bedlam, like almost like a hellish environment of the condensed, prurient thoughts of like 1,000 sexually disturbed people. Now, how that would have been focalized, first of all, how that data would have been retrieved and then focused on one person remains to be proved. Eldon, of course, died of a fast-acting liver cancer in December of 2002. So, Elizabeth died, and then Eldon Bird was investigating what happened to her and Fred Sitcher. I never had a chance to speak to Fred Sitcher, but that's what Eldon told me he had recovered. And Eldon was going back and forth between possible explanations. Were these demonic hauntings? Were they government attacks using sophisticated equipment? Because clearly that had obviously been proved in the MK Ultra literature and was a matter of public record as of the August 1977 revelation about MK Ultra. I mean, what was learned by MK Ultra is old news. It went operational, believe it or not, in July of 1963, several months before President Kennedy was assassinated. The technologies that MK Ultra developed having been put by National Security Memorandum under the Deputy Director of Plans of this.
And why is that so important that he mentioned JFK right there? I want you guys to know that there is an emphasis on JFK and the fact that he was killed actually right up the street from what you're looking at now at Pegasus Plaza. And if you go there, you'll see a plaque dedicated to JFK, which does kind of, praise his spirit and so on and so forth, and ties him into this entire project. So that's a really fascinating thing that Andy mentioned that. And we're just going to continue getting with the substantiation of this here with the authenticity of my own involvement on this project. And it's really fascinating when we begin to look at the technologies, which we're going to get into here in a second. The first one that we have here, and this is so neat, is this. Let me see this here. This was the first time that I put up this video, and it's so important because this outlines a shadow government system that I talked to Andy about before I actually utilized what we call a pineal interface technique to retrieve this information. Okay, and so that in and of itself is more validation of the corroboration between our two testimonies here. And what I'm going to have to do is actually jump back over here and get you guys this video. And I want you to see the way that we're operating here on these social media platforms, because it drives home the point of how they're exploited for these types of operations in conjunction with field work on these unacknowledged special operations. And so that's a very important point to make. But let's hear Andy talk with me about this interface that was going to happen prior to him actually, in fact, prior to he and I actually working together about it.
Try to project a little bit less and try to interject yourself into that kind of professional pattern, because, let me say that there's a generational shift going on, and part of like a lot of behavior that Richard Irvin has for me is due to the fact that he knows that people like me are his replacement. That's right. So what they're doing is a lot of aging baby boomers haven't really processed the fact that they're mortal. And they're being replaced, and the little ass-kissers or academic types, the little obsequious ass-kissers like Richard Dolan are acceptable to them. But when somebody like Hogan or Bassett realizes that I'm playing their truth-teller role from the role of somebody who was a child time traveler and went to Mars via jump room and published the first responsive data showing that Mars was inhabited, they just can't stand it because they look at their careers compared to the career that's opening up for me, and they feel like failures. They feel like utter mediocrities that they are. So what I would say is you could become like the Whitley Strieber of the mark of the beast, man. That's my work. That's really another thing that I have to do, Andy. That's why I'm here. Okay? And it's going to be very important.
So let's back up. He said that I could become this kind of Whitley Strieber of the mark of the beast, which is not something that I ever fancied myself to be, but we had talked about a series of very heavily compartmented issues within the Defense Department and worldwide events, and he understood immediately what it all meant from his, not only his intellectual prowess, but from his experience on the project as well. And so he was kind of a mentor for me on this, despite the problems that we had. I do want to give him credit where credit is due with that, despite the problems that he and I have had. And let's listen to this as well while we're here.
That you then link to on Facebook like I do with my Mars stuff. See? You're so young that, I'm 35. You're 35, right? Yeah, right age, still. as the person who's the expert in this area. You can be the go-to guy, like from all people in media. There's nobody who's doing that. Who's not a religious fanatic, right?
And so, why was the mark of the beast such a poignant thing that we discussed? And this really gets into some heavy compartmented information for people. We've outlined this for you. And I'm going to go ahead and open up an email chain that was retrieved through an Pineal interface technique, which essentially amounts to retrieving information from a holographic format through the use of your pineal function by accessing subatomic particles that are in superposition. And what that means is, in a quantum state with these quantum supercomputers, they're not a binary function. They hold information in different positions, which we call superpositions in quantum mechanics. And I want you guys to take a look at this, and we're going to understand how this is relevant to the mark of the beast and the use of these analogous imagery and semantics as a method of security classification, and continue to exploit this narrative as we continue. Right here, we have an email chain from Corey Hall, which is at Berkeley. The Electrical Engineering and Computer Sciences Division is what you'll see right there, where it says eecs.berkeley.edu. And it's towers at ptolemy.eeks.berkeley.edu. We see all of these different individuals from Darpa. We have people in here like the Deputy Director of Artificial Intelligence from the Stanford Research Institute and other places that are very senior in the Defense Department. And this is disheartening to look at, and we really need to take a look at it for what it is. The reason is personal, it says. My wife and I are in the middle of an adoption proceeding for a Chinese child. We have been expecting for the last 3 months to go to China any day, but bureaucrats over there keep postponing things. When we were given the okay to travel, I will leave no matter what time it is. And so essentially he's saying that they're going to go through improper channels. When you continue to read this, he talks about the red tape and how they're going to go back, and he begins to call that the China connection, which is kind of a frightening aspect of this when you consider China playing a role with such a prominent professor who has continued to go on to develop technologies for the brain-cloud interface system, as we'll see in the following documents. And so this gets right to the heart of the entire control mechanism that's devised by these technocrats to control us on this planet right now. And so here you see good and bad news. The China connection has come through. And he put that in quotes. And so you can interpret that the way that you want to. I can tell you that this was an improper channel for him to go through. The procurement of this child by himself was essentially an illegal act, and it does equate to human trafficking through the eyes of law enforcement. And again, this is at Corey Hall. And why was the mark of the beast such a prominent issue? Why are we looking at artificial intelligence technologies with the people involved in this email chain? And what does it have to do with satanic involvement and this human trafficking aspect that we've already seen? Well, let me show you this. Received from shadow.darpa.mil, okay? Shadow.darpa.mil. Let me explain to you that this is a network used exclusively for black-funded projects that essentially was functioning on a legal basis within the Defense Department. This is dated back on the 10th of December, 1996. This shows us not only the intent for implementation of these types of brain-cloud interface systems, but it also shows us how long it's been going on and how well orchestrated it is. That's very important for us to understand. And we're just going to get right into this. He comes back from China, so on and so forth. And we're going to get into this encryption here in just a moment. And just before that encryption begins, you can see that this comes from Edward Lee. All these people from DARPA and other places in academia are CC'd on the email. And what does it say? It says begin 666 complex systems prop. Okay, and then we're going to get into this heavy grade 256 military grade encryption, which nobody's supposed to be able to break this encryption. They still use it today. I'm here to tell you that the way that these quantum supercomputers store information gives a digital overlay on the organic surroundings and experiential reality that we have, and it can be accessed through the Pineal function to retrieve that information from this holographic format. And that is exactly what I did. And so, wow, you can't read this anymore. It's, oh, we're never going to be able to crack this encryption. I'm about to show you the first and second encryption keys for this information and show you exactly what you're looking at here in the form of slides. This is an exceedingly long email chain, and it does get all the way down to the bottom where there are innumerable different live links. It does authenticate the information. It takes me a while to get down there, so I'm going to go ahead and omit that. We've done that in some other videos, and that's pretty interesting. So what is this encryption key all about? This drives us right back into the analogous imagery and semantics as a method of security classification. What do I mean by that? I mean using symbology and historical references. Okay, you might use art, science, history, math, music as a reference point to drive home this information as a method of encryption. And so they'll use algorithms and keys to unlock this information. And what's so fascinating about quantum access projects is that the testimonies of the individuals that are involved are actually the keys to unlock the information that's embedded within these ciphers, which is, that's where the term decipher comes from. A cipher is a cryptological system which is used to keep the information secret. That's what a cipher is. And so as soon as this uploads up, you're going to see what you're kind of looking at here in a little bit bigger frame. That's the Tower of Babel. And so this is this thing called complex systems, and this is plugging everything in around us in the communications infrastructure into our bodies, into our souls, essentially, and with the intention to do so by people who understand this to a way that is far and beyond more than what most people will consider today. And so you have the participants here, you do have the analogous imagery and semantics, and these are also color-coded documents. And so you did get a chance to see the color coding in the images of Pegasus and Pegasus Plaza in the initial kind of introduction for this presentation. This is the same thing implemented by different people and used by them. And so the color coding here, what you do is you group all of the red words together, for example, to get a contextual message. And when you do that, you do some pretty shocking things. I'm not going to get into that with you here, but this is the basis of artificial timeline generation and how it's utilized through the use of waveform in the quantum network through the use of our sensory perception. And if that sounds a little bit like it's too much or over your head, let's just give a real quick way of thinking about quantum principles and what's been illustrated in the laboratories for a number of years, and that's back to the double slit experiment. The act of observation has a very measurable effect on the experiments themselves, and this is something that's illustrated on the micro scale. But when we begin to understand that these things are also functioning on the macro scale and how our perceptions will then kind of create our own reality, we've all heard that. Inherently, we all know, hey, we have this ability to create our own reality by what we think, by how we speak. This system was covertly designed on a black network to usurp our own creative abilities in order to manifest artificial timelines. And so that's a big concept for a lot of people to get, but inherently we really know that this is something that can resonate with us. So let's look at this from a Darpa ISAT presentation from 1997. Why would they choose this imagery? What does it mean? And what is it all about when it says modeling in an artificial universe? What? And so why are these people, these best minds, talking about such a thing is something that we all really need to consider. And I've put this information out previously, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but I just wanted to drive home the point of the satanic involvement. Of course, the Tower of Babel historically was built by Nimrod, the great-grandson of Noah. There was a connection to fallen angels in these ancient scriptures, and this is the type of technology that we're looking at today. And it all ties right in to what we're seeing playing out on the planet today. And essentially, Nimrod is a hallmark of satanic worship in the sense that he was what they call the leader of these sons of disobedience. And the Tower of Babel actually was a catalyst for us to be scattered on earth from a biblical sense. This is what's in the scriptures. We were scattered on the earth. Prior to that, we all spoke one language, which really was the language of symbology. This is how we understood things through archetypal learning and meanings. And so that's a very fascinating thing to think about. And this does get on into the cloud interface with the imagery. I'm going to show you guys that real quick because it is so important for people to understand. People like Elon Musk and others developing these brain cloud interface techniques where the things that I'm talking to you about with this Pineal interface, the cloud interface, this is all public knowledge now. But back in 96, most people would think that you were completely out of the realm of possibility to even consider these things. And so that's important for us to think about. And we're going to see a couple of images here of how the system in the middle actually is the cloud. And what is the cloud today? The cloud is the place where we store all of our information. And to think that there's an interface point between that information and our very brains is a very, very, very controversial topic today. And it's something that's becoming increasingly relevant to everything that we're doing. We have openly admitted people out there saying, hey, we're going to make it to where you can just download music straight to your brain and you won't even have to have headphones. You can just basically bump this in your eardrums through the use of this neural link. And so this is giving me a problem with the uploading right there. It's coming through pretty slow. It's a lot of imagery there. Let's see if we can make this come through a little quicker. And we're going to have to get this first segment done. And so let's see. Let me go ahead and show you guys the black funded out. Well, we can just look right there. Let's look at the black funded aspect of this. After we take a look at these couple of slides with this brain computer interface and the cloud link that we're looking at here. And that's exactly what you'll see in these images. So there's the first. Come on. There we go. And so what does this show us? Perspectives on a system. Designers, users, maintainers interact with images. Okay, timing, structure, control laws, logic. This really gets into a lot of security classification with the color coding and so on. The main thing that I think anybody can grasp from this is what's in the middle. The cloud is in the middle of that and how this is relevant to all of the different technologies and how we interface with them today. And so, wow, that's a big deal. Even satellite technology and so on and so forth. And I have made these available. These are the encryption keys that were found from a shadow network within the Defense Department. And so that's really a lot. And if that sounds like too much, oh, these are just downloaded files, anybody could have made these. Let's take a look at Rutgers University with a very heavily compartmented project. And we'll see that we have a live link from a viable domain at a university right now. What does it say? Received from shadow.darpa.mil. Okay. I won't get into this too much. It's about the GLOMO program, which is an artificial intelligence-based cognitive radio system, which is now implemented everywhere around us. But that gives you a sense that, wow, this is legitimate. And then let's jump right into here, where we can see a black-funded project between DARPA, Air Force Intelligence, and DynCorp, which has had its vice president arrested and sentenced to prison for his role in child sex abuse, which we all knew was going on for a number of years and was discounted heavily. We'll see here that, again, this is for black-funded projects. And I'll take you all the way down to the bottom here with this and show you the link to DynCorp. And this is important because it specifically states that financial data will not be made public. You know what, guys? That's illegal. And so that's an important thing to know. You know, there is some reporting to Congress and even the Office of Naval Research, Army Intelligence Center, all of these people involved with this. This is a matter of public accountability. And why was this network functioning? What was it used for? This gets into military abductions and highly classified projects, which, you know, if you notice the narrative at the top up there, treason is not a security clearance, and that's exactly what this amounts to, and that's why we're releasing that. So I just want to give you guys the frame of reference here for financial data will not be made public, and so that's exactly what that says. This goes all the way down here, guys, ladies and gentlemen, to the IP addresses themselves, which is a physical location where these people were located. And so what I can tell you about that is that this has been a matter of intense investigation for a number of years. I first released this information back in 2014 as relative to that. Here is another part. Here we actually have the user ID and password from DARPA to DynCorp And of course, also saying that the financial data will not be made public right there in the parentheses in that second to last paragraph. And so take a look at that. The entire post is up, and we're going to make this interactive for you guys. When you watch this video, you can come in, you can comment on these threads, and let us know how you feel about it, what you think about it. Share this information, most importantly, and let's just continue to back out of there. And so that just goes to show the fact that Andrew and I talked about this 666 and this Mark of the Beast issue before it happened, which is fascinating. Then it happened. A number of arrests happened that were spawned from this information being released. And, you know, this was my link into the project. That's my dad next to a former head of the CIA and American president back in 1970. Why is that year important? To frame that in the context of Project Pegasus is to say that Andy, one of the most fascinating aspects of his testimony is his account of having a lunch meeting at the La Hacienda restaurant in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with his father, Bill Clinton, the Bushes, both H.W. Bush and W. Bush, being debriefed to the fact that they were going to be future presidents, okay? He, in fact, says that that was in the year 1970. So, again, this Senate campaign, which is what you're looking at there, George Bush, United States Senate, framed on the back of that photo there, okay? And I've been working this operation my whole life. That's why I have this photo, and it is my father. You know, let's listen to what Andy has to say about this in the context of that having been framed by myself here with that former lunch that they had there as they were debriefed to the fact that they were going to be presidents.
Just depersonalize it and realize that we're on the same side. Okay. If I had funding, I would send you money to pursue your work. Because obviously your dad had contact with George H.W. Bush like mine did. I met George H.W. Bush when he was, what do you think?
After my dad just left him, Andy.
He was not even 50 years old. I met George H.W. Bush when he was like 45 years old in 1969-70.
My dad was with him. I can prove it at that time. I mean, not right then, but literally in that time frame so heavily, sir. You know, and
I may have met your father at that lunch because H.W. Bush was there.
I don't know if he was there, Andy.
I don't know if Bush was there. Barbara Bush was there, and there was a family friend or same-age peer of George H.W. Bush, and that was 71 when he was running for Congress. I could use your picture in my book, okay?
You're welcome to it.
So since that time, Andy and I have discussed that further, and we concluded that that was during the Senate campaign in 1970, which is totally in alignment with his testimony prior to him receiving this information from myself. And the reason that that's so important is at that time, my dad was a private pilot for George Bush Sr. And so it definitely looks like we can nail down the fact that not only is Project Pegasus legitimate, that our testimonies are corroborative of one another, and that certainly my dad played a pivotal role in this, as we're going to continue to see as we look at the technology that we're going to get into here in just a moment, and that's right here. And this is a radiant energy device, which is central to the testimony of Andrew, in that the Tesla teleportation device was a radiant energy technology. And I want to zoom in here, and let's take a look there. It says, Irvin invented and holds the patent on the device, which fits under the distributor cap of an automobile and taps radiated energy to increase gas mileage and engine performance and reduce exhaust emissions. Okay? Anybody can go look that up for themselves. That's from the Dallas Times Herald. Here is the actual patent. This is from the EPA that you can see up there at the top with the URL and the domain there. And this has my name all over it. I mean, it's my father's name, but I'm actually Eugene Irvin III. And, you know, how fascinating to think that we can prove that this has gone on. And what's really even more is that my dad coined the term particle acceleration by the stimulated emission of radiation. PASER, that's what it means. It's an acronym just like laser is. And when we look at this, and we tie in the testimonies of people like Al Bielek, Preston Nichols, Andrew Bashago, and so on, Brookhaven National Labs is central to their testimonies in innumerable different ways. Well, who's the main player with Pazer technology today? Brookhaven National Labs. Okay? We can see that here. And so essentially, my dad invented a particle accelerator that you could put on an internal combustion engine. It would have cost oil companies many billions of dollars. And so that is the source of the censorship in a lot of ways. This technology becoming public has always been an issue with the release of any type of public information regarding Project Pegasus, with the declassification of teleportation being central to that from Andrew Bashago. And so I can validate that teleportation is a viable technology, and we can go back up and look that, you know, downtown Dallas has a series of underground tunnels that are very well noted. Most people don't realize they go much deeper than what the public is aware of. And again, AT&T being a central figure with NSA and other security apparatuses within the intelligence community does play a central role in this. And that's a fascinating thing to consider, where we look at this architecture, we look at the color coding, we see the security classification, and we just are unable to ignore how credible this is. And so there's much more to come. You can see down there that we were going to get into part 2. We're going to cut this video short. I'm going to give Kandy a chance to jump in here. And I'm very open for anybody asking any questions. And again, we do this unacknowledged. We do this with a great self-sacrifice that she and I have both been through. It affects ourselves, it affects our families, and we're happy to do it. And I'm comfortable speaking with Kandy about that because we talk about it all the time. But at the same time, we know now that Black-funded projects really do exist. If anything, we've just shown you a series of Black-funded projects that are now validated exclusively, even through a live link that's still operational from a university on the same network that we see used exclusively for these Black projects. And so with that in mind, eventually, you know, we're going to be able to get a place in here to where you guys can donate for this work. We can work for you guys harder than putting every ounce of our blood, sweat, and tears into this. Because let me tell you, Kandy and I have never made a dime from releasing any of this information. We've never been paid to go to a conference. We've never charged admission, and none of our videos are even monetized. And so please keep that in mind when you're looking at this. And that's why we're doing this. It's not that we're doing it on a shoestring or on the fly. It's just that we don't have funding. If you heard even what Andy said in the video there, he said, if I had money, I would send it to you to pursue your research. We need your help with this. And I want you guys to consider that for our upcoming videos, because this is just an appetizer and a teaser for what's really to come. And this is real. This is legitimate. We can see right here from a military domain that, look, unacknowledged special operations are in fact a real thing, you know? And so what a fascinating thing to consider. Bam, different worlds, unacknowledged special operations and covert actions. Again, the difference between Title 10 DOD-led operations and Title 50 CIA operations. Kandy and I are literally walking the line down that here with you tonight if you're listening to this and viewing this video. So we appreciate your help. We appreciate your support. That does come first and foremost in the form of sharing this information, letting people understand this. And as we continue to exploit this narrative, we will show you the genesis and the birth of Pegasus and how it's relevant to this project. And so thank you so much for your support. And Kandy, let's hear from you. Let's get some questions out of you and what you think and how you feel about this and what's going on.
Well, I can just say that I'm honored to actually be a part of all of this. I know that I've been doing a lot of work for a very long time. People know me in this circle of, realms that we rub elbows in, and people are familiar with my work. They know who I am. They know I'm very real. They know that, I'm not out to do anything other than bring truth to light. And that's what you and I both do. I think we're a dynamic team, and I think what's to come is even more exciting than the information presented here tonight, because this is really just laying the foundation of who you and I are, how we work together, how we've worked together for the last 8 or 9 years, just, by happenstance of meeting each other on the internet and becoming friends and realizing that your work in artificial intelligence and these quantum-related projects very much connects with my work in the Morgellons realm. And circles. So I think that's very exciting for people who are listening to this, who want more information, who need more information to figure out what's happening with them. And I'm just honored and privileged to be here with you. So I do second the notion of, monetizing a little bit and getting some funds so that we can continue our work, because as everyone knows, myself personally, they know me, they know that I have never taken anything for granted. I've given the energy clearing protocol for free, which is literally on Facebook, which is literally saving lives around the world. You can read testimonials on that. You can watch videos of testimonials, and there's so much more to come. So this has been kind of a lengthy audio video, our first one actually that we've done together in this capacity. So I think we should leave it here and we'll pick back up, and I look forward to the rest of it. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome, and I definitely agree with everything that you said, and it's also, of course, an honor to work with you as well. But one of the things that I want to make mention of is these documents that we provide are things that we have been privy to that we're sharing with the public. And what you're looking at here is from clandestine, low visibility, Title 10 and Title 50 operations, and is now unclassified information. And so that's very pivotal, and this is something that certainly hasn't been shared out there. And so we would like to be able to increase the quality of these videos. I think that it was important to do this first video in the sense of on this social media platform, because we exploit these. And what we're going to get into to follow in the following segments is high-level arrests that have already happened, that are a direct result of the operations that I have personally been involved in the field. And so we're going to continue to show you guys that and how it's relevant to, frequency-based biological control systems, satanic ritual abuse, brain-computer interface, and how all of these things tie in with nanotechnology, bio-nanotechnology, and so on and so forth. So it's fascinating subjects. It's something that affects us all. Allow us to be able to help you more. We don't have somebody that we can say, hey, we need another grant for this, because it's all off the record. Again, it's all unacknowledged special operations. And so that's exactly what you're looking at here. And so thanks so much for your support. We're going to get this uploaded, and we appreciate your feedback so much. Anything else, Kandy?
That'll be it. Thank you.
All right. Love you.
I love you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.